Thanks very much, and welcome to the 473rd meeting of the Economic Club of New York. I'm Terry Lundgren, Chairman of the Economic Club and Executive Chairman of Macy's, Inc. The Economic Club is the nation's leading nonpartisan forum for speeches on economic, social, and political issues, and more than 1,000 prominent speakers have presented in front of our club members over the last century with a very strong tradition of excellence. I would like to take a moment this morning to recognize our 252 members of the Centennial Society who are seated in the front tables here today. And each of these individuals have made a contribution of at least $10,000 to the club, and that's the financial backbone that allows us to do so many of these events throughout the year. We were talking about today we're going to have 36 events this year. So when you think about the actual active weeks that we have to do these events, it's practically one per active week. So this team works very hard to accomplish all that we do here. Barbara and her team, we're grateful for all the great work that you do. I want to give a welcome to our students who are here today. They're joining us from Barnard College, from the University of Bridgeport, and from Columbia University. Welcome to you. I'm also pleased to welcome the members of the 2017 pilot program. This again was funded by the Centennial Society, and these are these mid-career executives that have been selected by board members of the Economic Club, and we believe that these are the future members of the Economic Club, and so we're glad to have them participate in events such as this. And a warm welcome also to our reciprocity groups from the Economic Club of Chicago, as well as the Economic Club of Washington, D.C., who are here in New York City today taking advantage of our members' benefits of attending our events. It is a great pleasure for me today to introduce a good friend and our guest speaker, Ginni Rometty, who is the Chairman, President, and CEO of IBM. As many of you know, IBM is a cognitive solutions and cloud platform company that leverages the power of innovation, data, and expertise to improve business and communities. Ginni began her career with IBM in 1981 in Detroit. Since then, she's held a number of leadership positions, including Senior Vice President and Group Executive of IBM Sales, Marketing, and Strategy. And earlier, she served as Senior Vice President, IBM Global Business Services, where she led the very successful integration of Price Waterhouse-Coopers Consulting. And that acquisition was the largest in the professional services history, and it created a global team of more than 100,000 business consultants and service expertise, which has really began the transformation of IBM. Ginni serves on the Council of Foreign Relations, the Board of Trustees of Northwestern University, and the Board of Overseers and the Board of Managers at Memorial Sloan Kettering. She holds a bachelor's degree of science with honors in computer science and electrical engineering from Northwestern University, and Ginni has agreed to have a conversation with me today, and this conversation will be on the record, and I'm looking forward to that conversation. Ginni, come on up.
Chivalry.
Exactly.
Terry, my buddy.
Welcome.
How are you?
Great. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And I think it's a great time for you to join us because there's a lot going on in your company. And for sure, IBM is going through one of the largest transformations in business today. And so let's start off by just talking about what you're doing and how's it going.
Yeah. Well, I would be the first to say it is clearly the most extensive transformation, even in IBM's history right now. But I probably look a little bit like a lot of other companies, to be honest with you. Maybe they're just a little bit behind us. And I was telling Terry before we were meeting outside, I said, well, maybe I'll just start with, when people say, well, what is IBM today? I noticed you were trying to describe it up there.
How'd I do?
Yeah, you're doing good, but you're our customer, so you're our client. So I guess if it seems no matter where I'm at with clients, like Terry's company, Macy's, if I ask people, everyone will tell you they're trying to become a digital company. Is that fair? Anybody who runs a company in here? Or they are digital? Is that, raise your hand if you think you're a digital company of some kind, or being and becoming.
That.
Okay, all right, so good number, right? Okay, that's the good news, the bad news. My view, it's necessary but not sufficient in this day. So if I had to pick one word to describe to a group like this, how has IBM reinvented itself, it would be around the one word, data. It would be around data. And this belief that, and can I unpack it a second?
Yeah.
A belief that to compete in the future, that data is going to be the basis of competitive advantage. Now, I would bet everyone is thinking, I got tons of data, I get no value for it. I would ask you, though, a second question, and I agree with that, by the way. Up to date, you probably don't. People's second thought, they believe, is that all the great data belongs to some of the new companies, belongs to these platform companies. But if I asked you what percentage of the world's data is searchable, what do you think, Tara?
It seems to me like 90%.
It's 20.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? So no, I wasn't trying to
90%
make
of my
Terry
data?
No. Not unless you have a cyber problem.
Well, you would know.
I know, I watch this stuff. So 20% of the world's data is searchable. That's it. The other 80 belongs to you guys. And that's where there is value. So if you could take that 80, really get value, the 20 that's out there, and really be able to convert the expertise in your company, you could make way better decisions. I tell you this story because I believe kind of phase one of disruption is ending. Disruptors disrupted a lot of companies. Phase two is going to favor, I'm be bold, it will favor the incumbent companies because you have all that data. Should you choose to use these weapons, you become the disruptor. And as I've said, it may just turn out that having a past may actually be quite valuable as you go forward. And so that's what we built IBM around, reinvented it around, because there's a lot of things you need if you believe in that world. And so on one hand, we help you build a technology platform, which I use the word platform on purpose, the IBM Cloud and Watson. We'll talk a little bit about both.
Of course.
That's a $16 billion big cloud business. The second thing, though, all this technology means nothing if you do not know industry and how a company processes work. We talk about that all the time with you. So the second part we've reinvented is a big piece around business consulting and business architecture for industry. And the third part is, you know what? The first two mean nothing if you can't transition from where you are today. And we're one of the few companies that helped your past, can help you do the future and the bridge to them. So that's IBM. One more point. Terry asked me earlier outside about our own transformation. So it meant IBM is a business-to-business company, 80 billion in its size, and today 45% of our products and services are new, growing at double digit for that part of the world we described. The other double digit, 45%, those of you that do math, that's 35 billion. And the others are very important businesses that, we run, the banks, the retail, the airlines, the credit cards of the world around that. So that's IBM in a nutshell.
Okay, so let's go deeper on that. So the pieces of your business that you see as growth opportunities, you said it's the 35%. So let's talk about those businesses that you see you're able to grow and accelerate, and then we'll go into those businesses that you have in the transformation of IBM moved away from or become de-emphasized.
Yeah. So, because we were talking together about how do you transform a company, and that's really what we're both getting at. Glenn and I, we were talking about the managing businesses as you reinvent some, and maybe a top line remember for IBM is we're a high value company. So this has never been about top line growth for us. Growth is important, so don't get me wrong, but this has been about how do you continue to move to the next best neighborhood. It's the only way you can be 100 years old or 106 or be 200 and in the public eye continue to reinvent yourself. You reinvest in yourself, you return to shareholders, and at the same time, last year we did 16 billion of R&D and capital and acquisitions so that you can go to the next space. So to Terry's point, we always have to reinvent what we do. And therefore, the reinvention's been around cloud, around AI, around data, security. We're the largest security enterprise company. We'll talk a little bit about that, I hope. And then the other pieces are really important. They run the systems of the world. They just may not be in growth areas, but they're all highly valuable. So to Terry's point, part of our transformation, done it with the long term in mind. We've acquired 57 companies in the last couple years. We've divested $10 billion. Of course, we've done that in the face of currency headwind, unprecedented, I must add, as the most international company out there. And so all that is to manage both the reinvention.
By the way, that's somewhat behind us at the moment anyway.
Yeah, fourth quarter, we're looking for a nice little tailwind, hopefully. First time in my position in time I will have ever seen that, right? Unprecedented. So you manage both. So you reinvest for the future, always moving, though, to a higher value business.
Right. So you've now already touched on how data is a competitive advantage, but you've also said
I have some views about how it becomes.
Views about how to use it.
Yeah,
So
can I,
please.
for those that, not that you want advice, but I would, I will humbly offer a couple points about this, because I think this is a very easy topic to say. And here's what I mean by you can make better decisions. Many studies have been done, and I know there's a lot of universities in the audience, that humans, all of us, a third of our decisions are super, a third are average, and a third are, well, let's say, could be improved, not good. And so if you sum that up in business terms, that's a $2 trillion market for better decisions. So we've kind of framed out that's a $2 trillion market to help people make better decisions. And I'm going to say I would do three things pragmatically, and I want to do a but on what we've learned on each one of these. I was thinking about this on the way over. So if you believe what I've said so far, you become the disruptor again. This data is going to be the foundation of it. And remember, this data is videos, pictures, sensors, numbers, history. It is hard so far until now to deal with it. So you do three things, but I would tell you to kind of learn a lesson on each of the three. Is that a?
Yeah.
So the first thing I would do is, well, the truth is you'll never make sense out of that data without some hard work in artificial intelligence. And the cloud will be part of that. You will have to embrace that. Here's my first but. But there is a huge difference between consumer artificial intelligence, which you might put as a gadget on your end table at home, and enterprise artificial intelligence. And I would sum it up this way. In companies, if you're going to make artificial intelligence decisions, now I'm talking about underwriters, merchandisers, fulfillment people, procurement specialists, a regulator, compliance person, you name it. These are professionals. So now the AI actually has to know a profession. That's way different than what's the top song in 1970. So first, you have to have vertical. So then you think, well, how does AI get trained? Big difference again on this kind of AI. There's not a million conversations about, well, maybe there is about the tax code, but I mean, there's not a million conversations about, your pricing methodology in your company or outside. So this AI has to learn on little bits of data very fast, different. And the third, and I think most powerful thing I'd tell you to go watch on this is, the value in AI isn't your data, it's the recipe, the algorithm that got smarter because of all that 80% you owned. You need to be sure whatever AI you work with, footnote, I agree, apparently this is a commercial for me on some level. We built it such that all that insight stays with you, does not train and go to your competitor. That's not true about almost everything else out there. So that's why I say there's a big difference between consumer and enterprise in the world of AI. So my first thing is, though, you're going to have it. My second big learning is if you're going to get any use in a company, you have to start to change how people actually do their job. We've watched company after company do experiments with AI and never change a workflow of how a doctor does his job or how you'll get no value out of it, basically.
Yeah.
And so in that case, I mean, things like, there's great examples in this room and in this city. So if it's to make better decisions, I mean, JP Morgan Chase using AI for trade surveillance, right? If it's to improve a product, H&R Block, some people might say sleepy H&R Block, who's always fought TurboTax, used AI, ours happens to have a name called Watson, taught it all the tax code of the US, all the tax code of every state. which you might not be surprised they're in conflict in many ways. We learned that out of that. But 11 million tax returns, they had 70 million in their history so that they could say, Terry, people like you did these things. And this year, they gained share, higher profit, gained share first time. I mean, so you could change a product and service, you can change how you operate. We were talking about how we use it in every part of our HR process to remove bias, as an example. So anyways, you change a workflow. My big caution in the but, I didn't mean to be this long, but man, you better have change management or you won't get value. And my third point, which I hope we'll talk more about, I feel very strongly when you enter this world, you have to enter it with some principles. Principle behavior. These technologies do need to be guided safely into the world, and they can be taught good and they can be taught bad. And so to a company, I'd say my but is be transparent about who's trained your AI with your customer. Tell your customer. Tell them they're using it. Tell them how it got trained. Tell them the data, the people. It's the only way that you can actually, I think, build a trustful relationship.
Yeah,
so a long question, but sorry, long
no,
answer, but those were on my mind to share those.
But it's a good answer, and I think something you just pointed out, which I think was very relevant to all of us, is that you have the ability to use AI, but to keep it uniquely yours, if you will, as opposed to making it
Be careful. I guarantee you most people have stuff flying out of their company and they don't even know it right now. And that 80% is where the value is. So I give you my
So that's why we don't have Watson Echoes inside the homes.
Look, this is an interesting thing, I feel. Most AI was built off of being a search engine out there. We didn't have the legacy of being a search engine. We've always been a business company. Quite comfortable in understanding that companies have privacy rules, data security rules, they want to protect their IP. That's the world we built enterprise AI for. That's why they're very different.
Yeah. So several members you met upstairs are from the financial services industry, and to tell us how cognitive is transforming these FSIs.
You like that question there?
Yeah.
You like that one? Okay. Yeah. So who's from financial services?
Who's not from financial services?
And who's from retail? Anybody else?
Yeah, we're looking at
Terry's table. Okay, all right. So, okay. Well, I can't help. Glenn and I were starting to talk. Well, we'll talk about AI in financial services, but maybe about blockchain too. If I can give you my layman's and some of my views about this, because we were just talking about Bitcoin and the like. So first, financial services. Wonderful opportunity for all these technologies. I don't think I have to tell everybody here. And if I might, on the AI cognitive side, what I see around the world, the number one spot everybody starts is customer service. It is so clear that, again, back to that third, all of you have call centers, all of you have interaction with consumers, that if you could improve that, you're a big step ahead. And so the application of these to teach your financial products to these systems, even to work with, and by the way, the reason I hate the word AI and why we called it cognitive, which just rolls right off of Terry's tongue, I can see, it's because AI had such a negative connotation that, there's a robotic apocalypse and all of these things. And we don't believe that world. Maybe, again, we'll talk a little bit about jobs and the like.
We will.
I would have preferred to call it augmented intelligence, and we believe its purpose is to make man better, make man do what man is meant to, or woman meant to do, and augment, help you do what you do, which takes me back into a bank. So I see it in customer service. I see that with I was just yesterday with Bradesco, the biggest commercial consumer bank in Brazil, and they have deployed this in all branches, all agents. They're handling, 350,000 questions a day, and they're helping their agents be 99% correct. For those of you that think yours are already 99% correct, that's not true if you've really gone and measured. I mean, your products are too many, too complex, et cetera. So I see that. Second place I see it is for compliance, regulatory compliance, whether it be AML, KYC, whether it be for trade surveillance, is those kind of usages. But the one I thought I would talk more about, if I might, to introduce a technology, my layman's term is blockchain.
Okay.
For financial services. Anybody know and love blockchain?
Well, just so you know, we had our fellows
Yeah.
who do have a debate just a couple of weeks ago on a couple of subjects. AI was one and blockchain was another. And they took sides. They had to take sides to divide them up in pros of each and the negatives of each. And of course, there's there's lots of pros in terms of advanced technology and usage and competitiveness and all of that. And there are some negatives too.
Yeah.
You're aware of some of the negatives that people are worried about, largely jobs and the social impact.
Yeah.
But talk to us about
Well, I'm going to come back to
apart.
jobs. So how many people feel they know what blockchain is? Might be using it. Okay. Oh, the same number. Well, then this will be a very short conversation because
No, it won't.
the whole crowd. So
You'll break it down further, I'm sure.
why do I even want to bring that up in a group like this? Look, this time of technology, when I talked about IBM, the IBM cloud, AI, data, this is going to continue. It's blockchain, it's quantum. They're going to keep building on each other. So this is why you feel this frenzied pace of change. Normally there's one technology on top of each other. These are one after another after another. They have a good chance to lead to an era where people will, if you can learn faster, like I said, data, you'll be the winner. You got to learn faster out of all this. So back to blockchain. It'll be one of these next. And I happen to feel very strongly that this one will be, it's much easier to do and will have a profound impact on the supply chains of the world. I will be very aggressive about my statement on this. Now, why? When everybody thinks of using the internet, there was some set of rules written up. And so information could be exchanged between people that didn't know each other. What I think blockchain does, simply put, it allows transactions, trusted transactions, to be exchanged between people who not only don't know each other, may hate each other, but they can trust that there's been no tampering in that transaction between each other. That's simply what a blockchain does. I do not mean Bitcoin. That's a different discussion. This is a technology underneath it, which, by the way, is open sourced. Well, I don't even sell it. I would make a footnote for those of you that are, this won't be technical, but there's whatever one you go out there and use, call it a fabric that you're going to build on, like a railroad track. You're going to build whatever you do on it. I am a strong supporter of something out in the open source world, which means you can get it for free, called Hyperledger. I think it will be the one that businesses end up building on top of, because it has a couple characteristics. A, it can do high volume. You live in worlds of 10, 20, 30,000. Credit cards go at 30,000 a second through. It can do volume, but two more really important reasons. It's immutable, the kind of cryptography in it, can't tamper, but even the more important reason, governance. Glenn, we were talking about Bitcoin. This is why you watched Bitcoin do some of this. There were two people fighting over, should we separate this, fork the... This is governed by at least 150 companies already. That is how the internet got started. You have to have governance on these open things, that not one party can decide how to rule the world here. They're not a major shareholder to it. So anyways, I did a diversion. Back into the blockchain and financial services. But your industry too, by the way. Yeah. We should talk about it. What it'll do is networks. So think of this. Northern Trust is already put up, big networks. 8 European banks came together, put together a blockchain to do lending to small, medium businesses. The 6 big banks in Canada have come together, and they said, look, we got to have secure identity for all consumers in the country. We can share that. They can share. They can't see what each other's doing, but they can see the data. So you can decide, and that a central bank can see certain things. That's the beauty of this. Or even an individual company. If I am, let's say, I said Northern Trust, private equity, you guys, some of you, very cumbersome paperwork to place. They put this up with a firm in Switzerland, maybe it was only $20 billion of private equity being placed, and take all of that middle stuff out of here. I run IBM Global Credit, actually does $40 billion of lending a year. All disputes up on a blockchain? Well, there's no dispute anymore. We know that invoice went to Singapore, and we know where that stuff was. So, a simple one, DTCC, you guys know, all of the derivative trading settlements, 11 trillion, all going up on a blockchain. So anything you can think of that's got a lot of paperwork and handoff in it, I think's got a wonderful opportunity to both be streamlined, better, shorter, new businesses will come up. Bank of Tokyo, Mitsubishi, they're doing intercompany transfers with it. which will come in handy depending on how the tax code ends up, that you prove what's going where on payments. So this is why I'm such a strong supporter of it, and I think for financial services, and I think your industry, it's a big one. Does that make sense how I described it?
I think it makes sense.
Don't say no, because I'll go on further.
Yeah. But what I didn't understand before you described it was that there's really one market leader here in the blockchain, in your opinion. And
I think it is because of that governance is a big, super big
makes total sense. So let's move to another industry.
Yours?
Yeah, mine. For the other 10% of the audience.
Let me talk to them.
So talk to this group about some of the...
Yours is the biggest industry that I think the disrupted can become the disruptor, right?
Me too, by the way.
Yeah, I know you do, and you're making some good progress, right? And I think this idea that if Terry took his data, I won't call it small, he's got a lot, combined it with that 20% out there, he de-averages the world. Today, so much is done on averages of all this stuff, you de-average the world. And so I want to give these guys some credit, if you don't mind, as I was thinking about this in retail. So how would you use these new technologies? So one, just one for shopping, that's so clear, right? Terry's team did something called Macy's On Call. So in certain stores now, they're piloting and testing, rolling out. I should say artificial intelligence means you can speak to it, natural language, no programming, it learns. That's the essence of artificial intelligence. And a consumer can come in and talk to what it is they're looking for, get suggestions, and this can just get connected into inventory and to a sales associates, all sorts of ways to make it easier to shop. That's a very simple one. Another one, Watson's been taught fashion, okay? Like, Terry could teach better this, but taught by fashion experts. What do you call this kind of fabric?
Tweed.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought he was going to say, like, well, tweed sounds cheap, doesn't it?
No. Chanel.
I want a refund.
Chanel is tweed.
I want a refund.
Chanel is tweed.
Tweed.
Not cheap.
Tweed. No comment.
In fact, it's several tables for one jacket.
Okay. No. So it's not what he thinks. Okay. So let's say knit. Tweed, boucle, I mean, all these terms that mean something in a fashion world, right, has been taught all this. So if you've ever gone in your mobile phone and said, show me a tweed blue sweater, as Terry knows, is attribution, right? That, you can't do that very much. Or take a picture of his suit and say, give me all the suits, just like that one.
And we talked about when we went out to see your team about how do we
we're gonna do that
have
now.
Someone walk up to Watson and say, what would you suggest for me based on what I'm wearing?
Right.
What would actually be another
So you got to understand that and do it.
handbag to wear with the outfit I'm wearing. So and with all these attributes, aligned with Watson, could we do that?
Yeah. So shopping will change. I think fashion recommendations will change.
Yeah.
The other thing, somebody like Unilever for assortment, hyper-local, like this store, knowing that these physical activities are happening. The weather is like this. By the way, for those of you who didn't know, IBM does own the weather company. So every mobile phone, that's us. I should put IBM on that, by the way, so you would know that. You didn't have to have me tell you that. But anyways, weather combined with all that together, Unilever, hyper-local, and the difference of what you sell is quite extravagant in what they've done.
Absolutely, yeah.
In the supply chain, if I might back to blockchain, some ideas here. Walmart, you're going to have Doug McMillan, I saw, coming up.
Next week.
You should ask Doug about food safety. So we've started, these blockchains can be big networks. It's one of the biggest ones because it's Walmart, it's Costco, it's Nestle, it's Unilever, it's Driscoll, it's Kroger, it's Tyson. You keep going.
It's international.
20 of us came together for food safety. 100 billion a year of food wasted. Many people die. It started because Walmart had some challenges with some pork in China, which is we got this up on a blockchain. Then we did it with mangoes. So 7 days to trace where your mango came from. We're down to 7 seconds for these things. Everybody's coming together and they're willing, even though those are many competitors and the like, right? In retail. It'll help these supply chains. They're doing it for this reason, and we can be sure competitors don't see different data.
There's also a consumer that wants to know this information.
Hey, they want the provenance. They want to know, where was that chicken raised?
How far away was this chicken raised? What was his name?
Who was his parents? And so there's a funny YouTube on that. And, where do you go to school and all that? So that chicken, we're doing that kind of work. So I think it's food safety is an idea. But even places, Terry, you had been one of the pioneers in this, and I see it with like Kohl's today, the supply chain work on using your stores, not only as fulfillment, but let's say when you go to return something that they've sent you, that AI and blockchain should say, you know what, don't just send it to a central place, send it to the store most likely to sell it.
Right.
Return it back to, label prints automatically to go to that store, not this fulfillment
There's so much,
center,
and I don't want to get
right?
stuck on
So,
retail, but the last thing that you guys were working on, we were talked about for some time, is that the call center opportunity of having the incoming caller identifying a screen for the operator. What is the probability of the problem this customer's calling with?
Yeah.
They're not calling to say, I just want to say what a great experience I had. They rarely ever make that call. So what is the problem? We can anticipate that and have the answer to their issue already posted while the phone is still ringing. And so that's where we're headed.
Yep.
I want to move into another category called healthcare, which is a place where I think IBM has really been a pioneer in terms of trying to find solutions and quick answers for doctors in remote places. But you've gone into cancer now and done some major work here. Talk to us about breakthroughs in
any
healthcare.
healthcare people? I know one.
Yes, a couple
Okay,
here.
two. Okay, so everybody's a consumer of it, though, right? So that at least I
Sadly.
think, maybe in big. So, because really the theme of my time with you this morning, is this idea that this data can change and help us do things we couldn't do before. And so on healthcare, what Terry's talking about, we might have started in the hardest area, I have to admit to you, with our AI. And we decided to start in oncology. And the idea that you could help diagnose and treat, I'll be at Cleveland Clinic tomorrow, not for a problem, but to work with them. And healthcare data is now doubling almost every 60 days. It's impossible for a doctor, truly any professional, to keep up. It's, and how many times have you gone to the doctor and said, are you sure? Or your parent, or are you sure that's the right thing? And what's the other options? What's the pros and cons? And doctor answers from their experience. So we started on oncology because of all the statistics about, we are privileged to be in this city, whether it's MSK or New York Presbyterian or whatever. Will go be treated at a cancer center. That is not true for the vast, huge percentage of people in the world. They will not be. They will be treated at a local place. And so that's where we started. We started with Memorial Sloan Kettering, and it was AI has been taught, read everything there is about, been taught every textbook. The doctors have been training 5 years, their world-class protocols, back to telling people who train this stuff. You don't want the internet training on the best solution for, go out there. Every illness you look up, you will die from right now if you go Google and see what you get. So you want this trained by experts. And so to Terry's point, by the end of this year, we will have trained 80% on 80% what causes 80% of all cancers, which is about 20 cancers. And like AI, the first one took 9 months to learn. We're down to 30 for these new cancers. Getting smarter. We are now deployed in 100 hospitals around the world, and you'll find it interesting. The largest take-up is China and India. Part of it is doctors who are willing to say, I know what I don't know. And in a country like India, there's 700 oncologists for 1.4 billion people. And we're to the point, the concordance, the agreement is 99% with what is the right thing to do. So you can reach places. So genomics, we're doing work with the Veteran Administration. You can now read a whole genome, instead of 160 human hours, 10 minutes to help them do the diagnosis. So try to read a medical record. If you've ever seen one, we had a training on all this. They're like 200 to 400 pages long. Try to make sense out of it. And so all that is part of this. And so we'll do our little piece. I am sticking with it. This is hard work. It's also, like any professional, people don't like to change how they do their work or would ever want to be told they're wrong. So how you do that is quite an art. So we're started with oncology, but now we've been doing work on imaging, value-based care, and really it's a platform. We went and acquired a lot of data. We have 300 million lives of data of what's happening. So you could, if Pfizer, drug discovery, J&J, Healthy Knees, Medtronic, we're continuing our work with diabetes. We've had some breakthroughs. So any client is as well welcome to come and then build on this. I think we are going to solve way more problems than we cause with healthcare.
You're talking with a lot of enthusiasm about a lot of the things that you're doing. What's the hardest day of work you've had at IBM as CEO?
My hardest day?
Your hardest day?
Well, probably, it's not any one day. My hardest day is ever when we let a client down on something. I have to, that is sort of the culture of a company. And I feel strongly about, I mean, our values are dedication to every client's success, innovation that matters for ourselves and the world, and trust and respect in all relationships and partnerships. So that to me, it's not any one, but, and it does, I would love to tell you that it never happens,
Sure.
but in what we do, that can occasionally, and that is a bad day to me.
I mentioned that the Fellows Program had this debate on
Yeah.
blockchain and AI,
Yeah.
and you've talked already about the benefits of both. So there was concern actually, and there were the negative side
Yeah.
of both equations was able to convince many in the audience to change their view.
To become negative or become
To
positive?
become skeptical.
Okay, well, I understand that,
Yeah.
actually. And so I'm glad you bring me back there, because especially to a group like this, thinks about a lot of issues. I do think, and there are a lot of people that have views about AI and data. I think as much as data is the phenomena of our time, it will be the issue of our time as well. We will reflect back on this. Privacy, security, what gets done with it. You can see the anger about a lot of this today. So it will be both the phenomena and it will be both the issue of our time. And so I want to start with AI in that I feel very strongly, and we do as a company, that this is about principled behavior. We put out a paper called AI Principles for this new era. Things like, we believe it's our job as one of the makers of it in the world to usher it in with responsibility and integrity. It is there to augment what man does. So purpose. Second thing, you must be transparent, like I've been hawking on all afternoon here. What data trained it? Who trained it? Tell people. There are many dilemmas ahead of us. AI will be used as cyber. I mean, I was telling Terry, we're already seeing this. Someone will infiltrate your training data. Let's say you're a self-driving car. It already happens. It trains the car that that's not a stop sign, that's a yield sign. What happens? I mean, you've got to, and so this is with high transparency. And the third thing is the jobs part, if I might. And I'll hop onto jobs for a sec. If this is both a great city, state on this topic. A lot of people say, so will AI replace jobs? So the answer is it will.
Yeah.
And so we just finished a study with MIT. They say, this study says 10% of jobs will be replaced. Okay, it's like any other technology. 100% changed. 100% changed. Man and machine, an era of man and machine. So do we really have a country, it is true in every country, by the way, a workforce ready for that? And if I can jump to that point, for all of us, I think, as I said, data the issue of our times, all this boils down to skills as the issue of our times. And if you look at just some pure numbers, the United States, 500,000 open tech jobs, 5 million, 6 million open jobs in general. Our high schools only teach 25% computer science. This great country only produced 40,000 computer science people. Hard to believe, these are small numbers. And so I think this is the essence of divide in this country. It's Brexit, it's a lot of things. When people think there is no better future in front of them, that is a cause for unrest. That is the seeds of revolution. And so if we don't change people lifelong learning, and particularly this thing about getting ready for this era, and if you think that the world can be that everybody has to have a university, God bless our university kids here, but that everybody has to have a university or PhD, forget it. This is not a good future. So we started work, and I think a public-private partnership can help solve this. You guys do, many people do, so I'll use us as an example, but many people are doing things that public-private partnership, we coined a word new collar, which is not blue collar, not white collar, new collar, so nothing negative. But that, could you, and we've got some kids here, actually Rashid, you're here somewhere. It was the very first principal of one of these schools called Pathway to Technology, the very first, here in Brooklyn, now 100 schools across the world, 100,000 kids, 4-year high school, 2-year community college nearby. In fact, actually, did I hear the community college, New York, is with you or no? Did I?
No.
No. And I thought, so think of it as a 6-year high school. And these kids are now, we've been at it long enough, they're graduating 2x median income. They can do lots of different kind of jobs. Very simple promise, a curriculum, give them mentorship, us 300 companies, and a chance at a job. And that's really it. And so I think this is infinitely solvable but it is a real issue to be addressed. So it's both the integrity of how you deal with AI and then preparing a world for it.
Right.
Otherwise, it looks beautiful, but it's a bad road between the two.
Right. So last question, sort of three-part question, is best advice you were ever given, advice you would give to the C-suite executives in the audience about this transformation of technology in their business, and advice to mid-career executives. So start with best advice. Best advice you were ever.
I feel like, you know.
Your last question. This is easy. Your layup.
Okay. Yeah. How about I give one all together? Can I do that? Because I think everybody's hungry, and I'm capable of boring you. I was telling.
Unlikely, but
Terry and I were a little bit chatting about this, right? And he was kind of remembering a story I had told him, and I've shared in some small groups like this. I said. And I think this is, well, you're going to not believe it. This advice came from my husband, okay? Well, maybe you would. If you knew him, you probably don't believe it. And Terry knows
I know him.
Yeah. So I was probably maybe 10 years into my career or so, 10 or 15. And I had been offered I was offered a job. I've told a few people the story. I had worked for a man, offered me a job, and I said, geez, I don't think I'm ready for this job. I said, I would hoped like 2 more years I needed to be ready for this job. He said, well, you got to go to the interview tomorrow. And I went to interview, and I said to him, man talked to me, I said, look, can I go home and talk? I'm going to go home and talk to my husband. And I said, I just don't think I'm quite ready yet, but let me go home. He said, okay. I went home that night, and my husband, Terry knows, I've been married now almost 40 years, so this is back a ways. He said, he'll sit there like always, like, I'm talking. And he says, do you think a man would have answered the question that way? I said, no. He said, and I know you'll 6 months be bored. This is wrong, Ginni. And I said, I understand. And in that moment, I went back the next day, and I accepted the job. And he looked at me, and it was someone who cared. He looked at me and said, don't do that again. I said, I understand. And in that, though, the lesson that I have conveyed to everyone who will listen to me, and I think it applies to people, to companies, to countries, is growth and comfort never coexist. And you got to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that if I ask you in the moments, when did you learn the most, it will be the moment, you shut your eyes, it will be when you were at risk. I'm pretty confident in that question. And to all my young women in the audience, and I have enough experience after all this time that I would say, and women are their most critical of themselves more than anyone. And that this idea of, hey, it's okay, you can be agitated inside, don't always show it. And that you've got to get confident. I mean, and it has shaped what I've done with our own diversity programs and inclusion, which I don't even like the word diversity, it's inclusion, about everyone being able to contribute. And it's shaped what IBM does about how we welcome people, whether it's today, yesterday, fighting for the Dreamers or the Bathroom Act. This is democracy. You got to get things roots up to happen. Or whether it's about our programs, 20-week parental leave, shipping mother's breast milk, keep women in the workforce. And I always remember even my own sister, she's got a Northwestern and an MBA in engineering. She'd taken time out to help her son, and she was nervous about going back to work. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so we've started like reconnections programs to give people confidence to come back into the workforce. It doesn't take much. So that has shaped a lot of what I am and about the company, and I guess if I extended to my lessons about the company, and I've had great predecessors, and it's been never define yourself as a product. Don't try to protect your past, but you do what's right for the long term. So this company will be here 100 years from now. So that's probably a good
I
ending.
think that you actually were successful in answering all three parts of my,
question.
my question with one answer. Let's hear it for Ginni Rometty.
Thank you. I'm clapping for myself.
It's okay. Really well
Thank
done.
you. Thanks, Tara. Real good, Brad.
Just a final message before we break for lunch, and that is our coming events starting next Wednesday, as Jenny alluded to. We have Doug McMillan, the head of the largest company in the world, Walmart, and right after that, November 29th, Randall Stevenson of AT&T. A lot happening in that company you're reading about every single day. And December 5th, we have dinner with Dr. Henry Kissinger. So we'll all look forward to that. Enjoy your lunch. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Tara.